All right, well, welcome everyone. It's so wonderful to see so many of you from all over the world joining us. It is morning here where I am. I am calling in here this morning from just outside of Denver, Colorado, and really excited to be bringing you an incredible story and a very unique perspective from the founder of ASEA, Tyler Norton. And you know, Tyler, for the last 5 years, I have spent most of my days meeting other entrepreneurs, meeting business owners. And something that I absolutely love asking all of them is, how did you get into what you're doing? I absolutely love hearing people share, the random doors that seem to open and just how beautifully things start to unfold to get someone to where they're supposed to be. And I just want to say that the story of ASEA captured my heart 6 years ago when I heard you share it. And I am so excited, honestly, very humbled to be sitting here next to you virtually this morning, Tyler, and having the platform to share with so many that I don't think have heard this story yet. So we are live on Facebook in a customer group, people that are consuming ASEA all around the world. There's nearly 8,000 people in there. So I know they couldn't join us live. They're going to be seeing this in the group. And, we have several hundred here with us on the webinar. So before we begin, those of you that don't know Tyler, just a little bit of background before he even founded ASEA. Tyler actually had a career in the financial services industry. He had a 2-decade career there where he was very successful. He served as VP, senior VP, chief distribution officer for several multi-billion-dollar financial organization. And I think, beyond Tyler's diverse leadership experience, I think what I really enjoy the most about him is he brings humanity to business. He has a podcast called The Corporate Soul, and he really talks about, how can you keep a soul in an organization? And really has created a culture here at ASEA of just motivating people to reach their full potential. And it is something that I know I personally have benefited from, the person I have become through my time with this company. You need a telescope to look back at where I was 6 years ago. And I'm just really excited, Tyler, to have you here this morning. So thank you so much for saying yes and for joining us.
Danielle, you're a gem. Thank you so much. It's just a pleasure to be with you this morning. And you're just as much an inspiration to me and to others as any of us might be for you. So this is a real treat for me and a privilege. Thank you.
Thank you. So I want to jump right in. We're going to jump straight in. And the first question I really have for you is, can you take us back to when you first were made aware that this biotech company had a discovery and how it is that you and your father really got involved with it at the beginning?
Yeah, thanks. I really don't like to think that I'm the founder of this company. I really give the credit to my dad, and to understand a little bit of this. We think of it as an odyssey. I mean, it's just a crazy story, but maybe it would help to just let you know that my dad was a strategist, was the head of strategy for Kraft Foods in Chicago before his retirement. And right around the time of the Olympics were in Utah, he retired to Park City, Utah. And I was the benefactor of my dad's experience. As you mentioned, I was an officer in a financial services company, and I started going to my dad saying, can you teach me strategy? One of the rare sons who wants to learn from his dad. It took me a while to want to learn something, Danielle, from my dad, but I really was intrigued with his background and what he had accomplished. He had been very successful in Fortune 50. And so when they retired to come out west from Chicago, I was living out here and started asking him to teach me. And he taught me these powerful, simplified strategic planning frameworks. And I kept going to him and saying, Dad, I'm teaching some of these principles inside my company. I'm teaching them to top producers in our financial services network. They're coming back to me saying their clients are wanting it. I was starting to get asked to speak at CPA firms for businesses that had done work with our financial firm. Like, it was really interesting. It just started to organically grow. And I said, you need to come out of retirement and consult a little bit. And so he formally put together some of these tools he was teaching me. And almost as an avocation, almost like a hobby, he started to continue to consult. One of the consulting engagements he did was for one of the largest food producers in the country. They asked him to run a subsidiary biotech company. And he spent 4 years running that company. And I was asked to go do a consulting engagement for a separate biotech company, the company that kind of spawned what is now ASEA. And given that my dad had had this 4-year contract of being the CEO of a biotech, I called him, and I was the senior vice president of a large financial institution. So this was almost a hobby, but I had taught this process to so many people that I got a call to come meet with this company. And so I called my dad. I said, do you have any interest in going with me to meet this biotech company? And so we went together, absolutely had no intentions or really any idea of where that would go. And I can even take it back. You talk about the incredible kind of almost back audit you can do on life, people you meet, and simple little choice point moments in a day or in a week that you really don't think much about that can truly have a trajectory change on your future. And that day when we went to meet with this little company obviously proved to be one of those. We were there really in the capacity of strategists, helping them to rethink about things. And they started to share with us these two technologies they were developing. And I remember being hyper dismissive, of one of them. I was just like, okay, they talked about salt and water and a patented process. And I was just quick to dismiss it. And we took them through our process, and I didn't think much more of it. They seemed very intrigued with my dad because he's really good at what he does. And I had kind of connected them and said, hey, if you want to take this further, I'm really busy right now, but I just thought it'd be nice for them to meet you. And boy, what ensued from there, they asked him to sit on the board of directors. He started really investigating their technologies. And that's how we met what is now, the redox technologies that underscore our primary kind of hero products. And there's a lot more to it. My guess is as we go through the interview, I might fill in some additional blanks, but it was really because of strategy and the consulting work we were doing where we met this company. And ultimately, my dad was on the board of directors there and went ahead to buy the patents and the research. And that's how we did it. It was just really fortuitous. It wasn't like we set out to start, a company in health and wellness. It was my dad ran into it, and I really didn't believe it as quickly as he did. So to his credit.
I love connecting the dots backwards.
Yeah.
And as you said, these little choice points, it's absolutely amazing. So kind of going off of what you just said, once you and your dad realized, what you had your hands on, I would actually say, I guess it's your dad that realized what he had his hands on, and you didn't really believe what the technology would do for people.
Yeah, I don't think anyone does at the beginning. I mean, let me back it up and I'll pick up where I left off and maybe fill in that to answer that question. So here's a 69-year-old, 70-year-old father who has been very, very successful. He was just as skeptical at the beginning. We were both kind of curious about it, but I didn't really talk to him again about that engagement for quite some time. And so I went to the house. I remember going to the house, and he had chemistry books and remembering he had run a biotech company, had 5 PhDs working for him and several grad students at the time. So I knew that he was versed enough to kind of understand some of the research and science. And to my dad's credit, he just never stops learning. He's just like really, really aggressive in terms of just always pushing forward. He never really rides the clutch very long. And so he was, he had all these books out, and I said, what on earth are you doing? What's going on here? And he said, well, don't you remember the company we met with? I'm digging in on this technology they have. And I said, the one that was made from salt and water? And he said, yes. And I said, you're crazy, Dad. That's a dead end. I mean, that's a control alt delete. There's nothing really there. And he said, Tyler, look at this research. And I remember they had dropped several boxes of research off, and he was calling the lead researchers at major universities. These are universities you would recognize the names of very quickly. The Indiana University, UCLA, one was done at Harvard, several other schools, and they were all doing small studies in service of this biotech company's original plan, which was to develop something that might be picked up by a much larger pharmaceutical company that would want to take it in a certain direction. And so here's Dad, he's got all this research, these books laid out, and he proceeds to tell me about this technology. And maybe it's because we're father and son, but I was pretty quick to hit the mute button on the remote and just like, okay, dad, and wished him well and went back to my day job. And the next time I saw him, he had this device, one of the small devices at the house. And he had these mason jars of like clear fluid in it. And he was like, I walked in, he's like, you need to drink this. And I was like, whoa, time out. It looked like moonshine. You know how they make moonshine and put it in these mason jars. And I was like, Dad, what on earth are you doing? And I kept pushing on him. I jokingly say he looked like the scientist from Back to the Future. He's in the basement and he had all these weird flux capacitor type looking things. And it was just, and I remember driving out of the house, Danielle, one time saying, my dad's had a great run, but the last chapter might not be his best, but I'll give him a hall pass because he's had such an awesome career. And so, I don't know of any person I've really truly met that's never heard of this technology that immediately goes, oh, it makes all the sense in the world. I will say this, if you look back at some of the most profound breakthroughs, not just in our lifetime, but like several lifetime spans, right? They're like these really elegant, simple things, super counterintuitive, and I don't have to name them. You can go find them. I mean, there's so many elegant, simple things that end up becoming fairly profound. And, but I do want to signal to anybody watching this, like, if you didn't believe this and still don't believe this, I don't blame you, because I certainly didn't either. And it wasn't until, I had a close neighbor that was going through a real serious challenge, and we discussed several ways we might be able to help that person. And, my wife and I were talking and saying, maybe we take the kids for a weekend so he and his wife can spend more time together. He had basically run the circuit of professionals that might be able to help him, and nobody was really able to help. And so, and then I thought of what we affectionately refer to as the stuff, the technology, the moonshine, the stuff my dad was working on. And I called him, and he was so emphatically confident, that it would help. And I remember being a little indignant. I was like, Dad, listen, you don't know. How do you know? How do you know this isn't going to negatively affect him? How do you know this might not interact in an unfavorable way? I mean, you come across, and my dad's always been someone that's, I tell him this kind of as a jab. I would say, Dad, you may be wrong, but you're not in doubt. He's a really confident, kind of driven person. And I was trying to create a little bit of space, like, you may be wrong here, right? And nevertheless, all I could think about was this neighbor of mine, Danielle, was the same age and stage in life as I was, little kids at home, and he really was in a bad situation. And so I found myself with a great deal of empathy and wanting to help. And so I said, what do you have to lose? I'm embarrassed to admit, and anyone who digs on this will know, that I was so concerned, so fearful of what might occur, that I decided I would give the product, which my dad made and put in like a 5-gallon, almost like a camping jug. And I was so nervous about it that I gave it to the leader of my church who knew this neighbor, and said, you need to give this to that neighbor. And he's like, well, what is it? And I said, I don't know. And he said, well, what can I tell him? And I said, you can't tell him I gave it to you. It might help him. And it was kind of a comical thing. And again, those choice point moments, right? I was never imagining I'd be on a Facebook Live with several hundred people around the world, or I just wasn't. I was just a neighbor. And, maybe in some ways that foreshadows the power of just sharing something that you think might help someone. I mean, honestly, that's sometimes how simple this needs to be, is sharing something that might help someone. So I did. I wish I was more confident and could sit up tall and say, that I did this, but I gave it to this church associate of mine, who then was confident enough, bless his heart, to take it over to this neighbor. And what happened from there has now happened, really almost untold numbers of times. I just can't even count it. But this was the very first of my personal experiences where several weeks after sharing it, he reached back to that church leader and said, where can I get more of the stuff? Again, this is pre-ASEA. And of course, the church leader calls me all excited and says, hey, something good is happening here. And he's pretty confident it's because of the product. So, I will admit that I went through my journey of being fearful and doubting. And I think those things are kind of like, kissing cousins, right? Where fear inspires doubt and doubt kind of promotes the fear. But sometimes you have to have a really stark contrasting moment that introduces hope, like a moment when you might be willing to say the two words, what if, where you're like, maybe there's more to this. And of course, I've got my dad ringing in my ears saying, hey, they don't know what they have here. There's something very significant. Now, he had since purchased the patents and all the research and was starting to look at ways to potentially commercialize this. And so it was really quite a story. I didn't want to tell my dad he was right, yet, because that was an enormous moment of inferiority, which had long-standing been my arm wrestle with my dad. So I said, I'm not going to tell him. So I decided to, instead of calling him, I called the neighbor. And it was kind of an awkward moment because I'm like, well, I gave the stuff to the church leader friend who gave the stuff to you. And, he got really quiet and almost kind of pensive, and then just said, do you have any idea what I think you've done for me and my family? And I just remember saying, no, I don't. I mean, like, just to be honest, I don't really like, I don't think we should say something unless we truly feel it. And at the time, like, there was no vision for ASEA. I had no motive other than maybe this helps somebody that's at the same age and stage that I am get through a very difficult time. And now he's on the phone in a very kind of almost reverent way saying, do you have any concept of what this has done for me? And my only answer at the time was, I don't really know. Could you talk to me? And I'm also embarrassed to admit that I had him come to my house, and I set up a video camera, and I recorded he and his wife talking about their challenge and their experience, just so that I could get more confident that what Dad was doing in his last chapter was not going to be like some really bad turn. And, one single experience, I kept saying, come on, this could be any number of things. This could be, I used to say, your mind is a pharmacy. You can believe something and you can create the outcome in your body. And so and then he reminded me, even the neighbor said, well, I didn't know what it was. I wasn't, processing it through any kind of a lens of anything. But I will say this, and again, I may be bouncing around some of the questions you intend to ask, but I just know that for me, that first experience was compelling enough to engage in the process of asking, what if this could help? And at the time, my dad was starting to unpack the whole concept of redox signaling and redox in general, redox biochemistry, redox biology, and then the role that redox plays in cell signaling. And it was just such an interesting and very, very foreign thing for me. But when it became real, like when a husband and wife were sitting in front of me saying, do you have any concept of what this has done for us? And I was really having to process in real time the impact it could have. That's kind of how I took my journey into a place of hope. And then I've said in untold numbers of settings that, experiences over time, several experiences over time, start to rack up to where hope moves from a place of like hope to really a strong belief. And that belief is no longer on trial for me. Now, I'm not suggesting anyone listening, either live or otherwise, should take what I'm saying as enough. I think you have to have an experience that helps you or someone you care about or someone in your sphere of influence. But I had that one experience that spawned others, and then it got to a place of strong belief and conviction, and that leads to action.
Yeah, I think so many people can relate to that, because I think we all move from this like space of complete doubt. Like, there's no way this could be true, or how could this be true? And or if it is, like, it would be everywhere. And why haven't I heard about it before? And we sort of take this journey from doubting it to going, well, what if, and having hope. And the experience for myself was the same. My mom brought this to me, and I was like, Mom, you've lost your mind. This is a scam, and you should walk away from your friend that brought it to you. And her belief started to grow, and it was her belief and then my dad's belief that ultimately made me go, well, okay, well, what if, if this is right, let's see what it could bring. So I thank you for being so candid. And I do, when I share my story, I say the same thing, because I think we all start in that space. And
Yeah, for sure.
I want to take now from, you kind of mentioned this, your dad was starting to look at what he could do to bring this to market. And the intention, I believe, was to sell it. And so can you walk me through what happened as you all started to look, what is the best way to bring this to market?
Yeah. So you got to remember, my dad's a consumer goods guy. Like, he knows his way around that space pretty well. And very close, like first name basis friends that were on boards of very, very large pharma companies. I mean, he had a great network. And so I think some of the folklore around this product is that my dad had this magnanimous vision to save the world. And that's not true at all. I mean, it was just, let's buy this house and paint it and recarpet it and let's flip it. And but I will say that as he started to better understand and he started to deepen his belief that there was something compelling here, it caused him to have to stop and reflect about, how will this be used if I sell it? How will this make its way to the benefit of others if I sell it? Now, my dad wasn't like ridiculously wealthy, but he was very well off. And, he had retired in his mid 50s from senior executive positions in Fortune 50. He had done well enough, built a beautiful home in the mountains of Park City. I mean, life was okay. Done some consulting work, went out and ran that biotech company for a season. So this really wasn't so much of an economic play. Once he started to realize that it was having an impact. And so he did entertain offers and engagements with pharma companies. I think it's dramatized a little bit, if I'm being honest, but there was a moment when he said, you know what, we've got a decision to make here. And if we choose to go this route, they were being very clear at how narrow that would be, how long of a process that would be. And the use case application, the way I like to think about it, Danielle, is like a metaphor of a piano. That route would have been one key on the piano. It just they would have said, you can play this one key and one key only. And dad was beginning to understand, because it was signaling at a cellular level, and cells are central to every functioning part of the body, like the whole 88 keys. I think he started to realize, you know what, this may get buried. Is there another way to do this? And a close associate up in Park City, Utah, said, have you ever considered direct sales and a direct platform like this? It will tend to find the people who need it quickest that way. And my dad, in his confident ignorance, said, yeah, let's try that, and had no idea what he was talking about. But he tends to succeed despite that. So hope he's not listening, but that's the truth. And so he knew that, you're not going to put this on the shelf at a store and have somebody be able to interpret it and what it is and why it might help. It needs to be shared from a place of conviction and experience. And so just like your parents to you, just like him to me to someone else, he had shared it with people similar to my neighbor, and they were knocking on the door and they were coming back to him. And so there were challenges, but that was how he got to that place and said, let's go build a network company. Let's build a direct opportunity for people to come in as customers. And if they choose, by virtue of their belief in the product and the opportunity they see in it, yeah, let them help us to sell it.
Beautiful. Well, I think that speaks a lot to the driving force behind your dad, but I kind of want to ask you the same question. So what is it that compelled you to leave a very successful career and transition into bringing what at the time many people thought was just a saltwater product from Salt Lake City, through network marketing, which is a business model that's very prevalent in your area of Utah. So I can only imagine what was going through your mind.
Yeah. So, I'm not going to lie. I didn't have great interpretations of this industry or this space. And I was not, I didn't have a vision of doing what I'm doing now. I do tell the story, Danielle, of as an executive, I once delivered part of the products we offered were insurance products, and a young father had passed away in a plane accident. He was actually in Central America on a service expedition to help very underprivileged people, and the plane went down in the highlands of Guatemala. A really terrible accident. And so here's this mother of 3 kids, and our company had insured her husband. And I remember I worked on the claim, worked with the authorities in Guatemala to get all the proper proof of what had happened. And I had $1 million check plus some interest that I was taking to a 32-year-old mother. It was a really touching moment in my career because, you sell intangible instruments sometimes, financial instruments or otherwise, and you sell the potential or the promise of what it might be, but it's not till you see that promise fulfilled that you feel really differently about it. And briefly, I'll be really quick. I drove up. Her dad came with her. He was a CPA, and they had three of her children. Her three children were there. They were young enough that they needed to be with her. And I mean, I sat down. I remember my hands were shaking because I was delivering to her, and I said, "This is a love letter from your husband. He cared enough to do this." And I slid this check across the table to her. She had only paid, they had purchased the policy. It was a term insurance policy, pretty cheap in the grand scheme of things. And they had paid like $200 of premium or something like that. And she flipped it open. Her hands weren't shaking, interestingly enough, mine were. And she lifted the check out to see what it was. And then she slid it back down in the envelope, closed it, and said, "I thought you might be bringing me my $200 back." And I said, "Not today. That's the promise of this product." And so, she didn't get emotional, but who got emotional was her dad. Her dad was sitting next to her and was overcome with emotion because, we had their three kids were coloring in a room, it just kind of doing things to keep their mind off the discussion. And it was just a really tender moment. I mean, I had these little kids. I had her dad who was worried about his daughter. I had a woman who had lost her husband, but a husband who had cared. And I walked out and got in the car and thought, wow, that's an amazing moment in my career as to the purpose and impact that we can have. And it wasn't until I was helping my dad with ASEA that it occurred to me that all of those feelings I started having more and more frequently, whether it was with my neighbor, he'd say, "Hey, come help me speak to a group of Spanish speakers." I speak Spanish fluently, so I would go help him tell the story of ASEA, but it was all just helping my dad. But the people would come up to me after these meetings and they would tell me all of these stories. And the only way I could compare that feeling, that amazing feeling, was to that day when I delivered that check. And it occurred to me, the big distinction was that someone had to die in order for me to feel that incredible feeling in that insurance environment. Whereas over here, we were helping people to live and live more in a more meaningful and healthy way. The feeling was the same, but I didn't have to have an incident that was tragic to create this outcome. I don't know if that contrast helps you to see it, but it just started happening more and more and more with my dad. And so, he started saying, "Come help me do this, quit messing around over there and come help me do this." And, again, I'd love to tell you that I'm the visionary all the time, but I was kind of the doubting Tyler, and it took me a little while to dial in, but that's why I left. I felt like there was a wonderful opportunity to do something for other people that had meaning without necessarily having to have a really negative thing happen for my product to make a difference.
Yeah. Well, that's I appreciate, again, you being so candid and honest. And I would love to hear, what has surprised you the most? So now it's been over a decade since you made that decision. And what is it that's, I don't know, captured your heart or given you the most surprise over the last decade plus with ASEA?
Well, I pulled this out this morning knowing that we would have this conversation. This is I'll tilt my camera down here, but this is a binder. And these are all letters. And some of them are handwritten, some of them on a yellow piece of paper, some with families or pictures with my dad. And this is a very, very small sample size of what have been into the thousands of letters. And I think what I love most about this and have been surprised the most about it is It is the 88 keys on the piano. I don't think it's a panacea. I wish I knew why it worked really well for some people and others not. I happen to be someone that have never had like this amazing demonstrable, acute experience that said this did this for me. Clearly I use the products. But these stories are remarkable. And they're stories of 15-year-olds and 7-year-olds and 70-year-olds and 85-year-olds and everything in between. And they're stories from very intelligent science background type careers and retired school teachers and moms and dads and just about every walk of life. It doesn't really seem to have any kind of socioeconomic bias. It's helping everybody. And I think the surprise for me has been that, because I remember saying, Dad, look, you're 70 years old. You may want to hang up the cleats. You've had a great career, but he's like, I actually think this can help a lot of people. And I think we have a moral responsibility, if it can, to try to get it out there. And then to have so many of these, and I'm not cooking this up for a Facebook Live. Like, I value my own character well enough not to want to do that. I really don't care if somebody's listening now and doesn't understand or believe it and thinks this is topspin in a world that is filled with topspin. I get it, right? But this is real for me. I mean, these are real people, and I wouldn't want to share their stories because I don't think that's right. But it's real. It's like, it's here, and that's just a handful of cities where my dad was going to visit, and they said, why don't you write your stories and we'll present it to him. And so this whole binder is just like 2 cities in the 3rd or 4th year of the company. And now we're in 33 countries. Last night I was on the phone with hundreds and hundreds from Australia. And then again, later last night with Malaysia. I mean, this is so amazing. And I sent a screenshot to my children last night. I have a large family. I have 6 kids. And, I sent a screenshot of this beautiful image of these highly diverse people from every walk of life and in Malaysia that, and I just sent this to my kids and said, this is a really special thing to be able to meet these people, to actually have something to say they want to hear, but to feel the energy through a Zoom screen, second only to the energy I'd feel if I was with them personally. And so the surprise has been the impact and the influence around the world and the beautiful, joyous relationships that I've been able to meet and know, and others that have met and known each other. And Danielle, let me just say this, the miracle of this product is not the product. The miracle is the person willing to share it. And I'm so amazed that people will come up to me and say, hey, you need to hear my story. They'll tell me this amazing story, but oftentimes they won't tell me the real miracle, which was the retired school teacher that walked across the street and said, hey, this can help you. And that's an amazing thing. So what surprised me, the impact, the use case potential across 88 keys. It's not really narrow. I do not want to, I have a high degree of sensitivity to exaggeration or hyperbole. I don't appreciate that in marketing, and I don't appreciate that in companies. So anyone listening with a cynicism approach to this, you're actually probably more like me than not. And all I can tell you is to try this. And if it doesn't work for you, then it didn't work for you. But I can only tell you that there's a very large range of people having a positive experience with it. And I think it's worth a try if it has potential to help, especially people you care about. So I don't know if that helps, but that's been the most surprising thing for me.
Yeah, absolutely. It helps. And I was going to ask what the products have done for you. So it's fascinating to hear that you haven't had some big wow experience, but of course, have your family on it, and you have lots of children and siblings, and I'm sure all of you take it every day.
We do. Yeah, we do. And we've had incredible experiences in our family. I think, there are a lot of people that take this and don't feel anything and don't know what's happening. And I just think at some level, you've got to lean into it. I know there's a lot of us that eat things every day we know 100% are not good for us. it seems reasonable to think that we ought to be doing things that we can be confident are good for us, regardless of the fact that they manifest themselves. And by the way, if it manifests itself in an acute way, unfortunately, a lot of times that's in response to a challenge. So the preventative dynamics of what it could be doing, right, while it may not be clear to you, may be actually avoiding a lot of challenges. So for me, it's a part of a regimen for my family too, in different ways. And nobody's more using it than my dad. Like literally, you can't walk into a bedroom in his home without a bottle of ASEA within arm's reach. So
I love it. Well, let me ask you this. What is your vision for the future of this company and the impact that you wish to create in the world?
We chose to share this product with the world through people, rather than through retail or other channels. We chose people. And that has been a choice that has been a great blessing to me personally, because I believe that, wars are fought over oil, wars are fought over resources every day, but the greatest underutilized resource in the world is people. And not utilized in the form of manipulation, utilized in the sense of awakening potential. And so I get great feelings of kind of like a compensatory feeling, something that feels like it's feeding back to you, not just from stories like in that binder and the people telling me the impact it's having on them from a product perspective, but in as much as we can share this through people, I get wonderful stories back from the people that their lives are being enriched by who they're sharing it with, how they're sharing it. And in some cases, if they choose to sell it, and I don't ever want to sound like I'm trying to promote that. If it's not right for you, don't do it. But the people who choose to do it and that start building a little bit of an income stream off of it that blesses their family. And by that, I'm not talking about Lamborghinis and yachts and clubs. I'm talking about like the dignity that comes from a few $100 extra a month to a single mom that's trying to help a child, or that's the stuff that makes me feel the best. So I don't like to think in terms of vision, in terms of just like financial imperatives. And, even though those are very central to any business, and trust me, I came from the financial industry, I can volley with the best of them on the financial side, but I'm way more interested in the impact the product can have on both people that really, really need it, like my neighbor, or people that don't know they need it and probably need to find it. And on the other side, I'm really grateful and excited about how we can create a place of safety for people to grow and become. And what shape that takes will need to be decided by them. But my vision is to continue to get this around the world. I mean, we're already in 33 countries and frankly have no business being in 33 countries that quickly. Maybe if I was doing it over, I'd slow it down a little bit. But the truth is, it's gotten to people that needed it. And that was my dad's number one goal, was just achieve worldwide distribution of this so it gets to the right people. But I think I would add to that, my vision is to help as many people around the world who have an interest, or this feeling like I'm not actualizing myself. There's more of me that I want to do and become and accomplish and achieve, both in service of the people I love and in service of humanity. I think there's a lot of people that feel like they traded that for what the current construct of responsibilities and bills and, just what life deals you. And I think there's a lot of people that have gone down the road 10, 8, 12, 15 years and almost are a little surprised at how long they've been on this straightaway. And they feel hemmed in, right? The cones on the road slowly start narrowing you into a single lane. And I don't think there's a lot of people that know how to broaden those lanes again and give themselves some freedom and room to move and make decisions for themselves. So my vision would be to try to increase or reduce the barriers to entry to that, help people find that if they want to, help to awaken that for the person that's maybe muted it too, right? There's a lot of people muting that voice in themselves that says, you know what, you should accept the hand you've been dealt. And I just get really excited about the notion that, redox is often referred to as redox potential. So the oxidative reductive potential is an interesting parallel. I get excited about redox potential in products and how they can affect your body. And I get really excited about human potential. And my vision would be to see that we're doing all that we can to power both.
Yeah, I think hopefully many of you can see now why I said part of what really makes Tyler unique is bringing humanity back into business. And Tyler, I was listening to a talk by Bob Proctor actually this morning, and he was talking about how, look, any business, like think about a hotel. If you took the people out of it, you just have, a brick and mortar edifice with a bunch of stuff in it. It's business is the people. It's all about the people. And I believe the way I look at it is, we all have a seed of potential within us. We have so much capacity, but if that seed's not in the right soil, it won't grow. And what I can tell you is you have created a beautiful environment, the right soil, to put a seed in it and allow it to grow and become. And as I said, I'm definitely a beneficiary of that. And so grateful.
I'm grateful that you'd say that. It's a great metaphor. So thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, of course. So I just have a few more questions, and they're maybe a little more specific. So can you speak to us about the company's commitment to science and to research, and what sort of things we're going to see coming out of the Verticel Norton Center for Redox Life?
Yeah, so there's some interesting trends that are happening. If you were to Google redox, for example, and just the word university, in the last probably 5 to 7 years, across the globe, and definitely in the United States, you would see centers that are being set up at universities called, Centers for Redox Biology and Medicine, or centers for this redox. And that maybe this would help our listeners and viewers a little bit to know that there was a really early bias to the ox side of redox, meaning the oxidant or antioxidant side. And so there were huge societies that once they started learning the effects of the oxidant role in the body, that were set up around it academically, in trade, in a whole bunch of different areas. A good example of this, Danielle, is the Society for Free Radical Biology. Okay. They were studying and focusing on what became kind of a household term, which is an antioxidant. They were studying, the free radical effect in the biology in the body. 4 or 5 years ago, they renamed themselves the Society for Redox Biology. And the reason they did that is because the whole punchline of redox is that they've been focusing on one side of the coin too much, which is the ox, and not understanding that the balance between reductants and oxidants and how they play in the body are such an important part of how we signal, how our cells communicate, and how we ultimately restore balance. And so they kind of made the hero antioxidants and the villain oxidants. And the truth is, you would die without the right balance of oxidants. So the reason I give you that context is you're starting to see, this is why my dad really was very much out in front when he said, this is where the puck is going on the ice, to use the metaphor of skating to where the puck is going, not to where it is at the time. Where it was at the time was a bias towards free radical and oxidant biology focused. And now what you're seeing is the universities, and in general, even you're going to see this across supplementation. You will see an elevation of the word and concept of redox biology playing out in supplementation, in medicine, in universities. You will see people getting 4-year degrees with a bias and specialty towards redox. So, the science, what's cool about that, and the reason I bring that up in the context of your question is that, we kind of felt like we were alone 10 years ago trying to find people that might want to partner on a research initiative, or that, want to do certain types of science. And we're starting to build relationships around the world with folks that are in this academic space that are doing research. And so one major initiative we have as a company is, as we build those relationships, to explore research initiatives that not only affirm what we already have, but start to open up potential for future product. And that intersects with the Verticel Norton Center for Redox Life Sciences, because we start to kind of collaborate. So our internal teams on the R&D side are starting to build relationships on the outside. And it's really interesting to me, no one, not only in this space, but in any commercial space, has fenced off the framework of redox better than us. And, I'm not one to boast about stuff, but that's actually more of a fact than it is a boast. It's just like nobody is seeing that this framework for developing products, supplements, things that are a high impact, is really where the puck is going on the ice. So we are committed to science and research, but we've kind of felt like we've been on an island for a long time. And now we're starting to see people going, hey, this is really important. And it's also opening up not just keys on the piano for our current hero products, but new keys on the piano and the piano of redox. And I would expect for us to, and we are working on initiatives right now to kind of drive us into increased exposure to what redox means for the body in the form of products.
Super exciting. Yeah, to be on the forefront. It can be lonely, but like any new innovative technology, right? There's a gap, and then just more and more starts to fill in. So one question I do have, can you tell us about the vision for the expansion of products outside of just the redox technology? Why are you all creating things like the ASEA Via line?
Yeah, I mean, I want to be clear. I get a little disappointed when I hear people in our networks, kind of overstating that, all you need is one thing. I mean, nothing could be further from the truth. Please don't do that if that's you sharing this. I mean, we have a very powerful product and technology across the redox range, but nutrition and supplementation of the right things in your body matters. So our Via line is aimed at, you're going to need to arm your body with the right nutrition in order to take full advantage of the cellular potential you have. If the cell's not signaling and firing, yes, that's a problem. If the cell is signaling and firing in absence of the right types of nutrients and what it needs for all of its functioning organelles and different parts of it to really play their role in synchronicity, I mean, then, yeah, I think it's pretty clear. So we aim to try to stay like kind of center lane or fairway for us is definitely going to be redox, but there's ancillary things we can do. And I like to think that our goal is to bring high impact products, but also high integrity products, just products that you can feel good about. A lot of the people sharing ASEA are already buying other products in the nutritional supplementation space, and we would just like to be a consideration for that. But I don't know that will ever be our middle C, right? I think our middle C will always be centric on our current technology and the patents and things that we've kind of pioneered.
Yeah, makes absolute sense. And I think I'll get a lot of messages if I don't ask you this question. So you kind of hinted at some new products. Anything you can tell us about what you're working on or where you see taking the redox technology specifically from here?
Yeah, I think maybe building off of the answer I gave you about how the research community is pivoting and such, we're really trying to see where we could take redox as a broader framework for supplementation. I will be honest and tell you, I think we would have to look for a long time to find anything quite as impactful as what we've had up to this point. The more I look, the more work we do, the more research we do. I'm amazed at the fact that Dad had the vision to see what this could be. And I think without pulling back the blinds too much, because we're still working on things, I'm encouraged by things I'm seeing. I'm encouraged that for example, there are things we can do in topical application that better harness redox principles that allow us to do more for skin. That's definitely a big discussion point. There are things we're learning about our own core processes that portend possible additional products that we're working pretty aggressively on right now. So I don't like setting an expectation that I can't fulfill, but I will tell you that I've come to the conclusion that while we should never stop looking for another ASEA redox type supplement, what Dad found early on was already 20 years in incubation by then. And so for us to have picked it up at that point, and now we're 11 years, that's a 30-year process to get to what this is doing in the world, which is kind of scary and humbling, right? To think so many people need it. I think of one particular story, a video shot in a marketplace we're not even open in, of a very, very challenged little boy. And it was done in his language. And I don't know that I've ever seen anything more impactful than this story. And to have that kind of impact on the needy of the world, in the sense of any kind of challenge they're dealing with. I don't know that you're going to find something quite as strong as what we've had. I think that will always be our middle C. But as I mentioned earlier, redox principles, as it relates to redox biology, please understand, redox biology and redox biochemistry as a phenomenon is the transfer of energy. It's like central to all human life and all plant and animal life, like everything. There is no way my hand moves without redox, biology. The energy required for those fingers to go down and up, right? This is all about energy transfer and the utilization of energy in our bodies in a way that helps to signal appropriate functioning of how things were intended to work. And it can be a little slippery at times because the concept can be a little hard to understand. But just think about, there is really no signal. There's no Zoom call without energy. If I don't have my laptop plugged in, receiving a form of energy that powers my screen, that sends that signal, right? So you can see the relationship in so many other ways. There's energy. If this is batteries done, there's no signal being received or sent. So when we talk about cell signaling in the context of redox, we're talking about the energy transfer that promotes that signal. And that's sometimes part of the story that's kind of backstory that we don't elevate as much. When you think about new products in that new context, you start to say, I got it. There's the transfer of energy, and the way you manage electron transfer is going to be an interesting part of the future, not only of supplementation, but I genuinely believe of health and medicine around the world. So that's kind of maybe a 50,000 foot answer to a question I know you'd love me to be like 10 feet off the ground telling you, but we're still working on the specifics. So I'll give it to you in the abstract.
That's fair. I'll be patient.
Thank you.
And I guess last thing, Tyler, I'm just sitting here just in awe at how you show up and you bring your heart to this company and to every conversation. And this morning I was actually thinking, I wish there was one question I wish I'd put down, which was, would you explain redox in your own words? And you just did that. So can you just, I guess, wrap things up? Any last thoughts that you have, anything that you want to share with the consumers of ASEA out there?
Yeah, I think we live in a world where we have these really interesting values when it comes to products. There are some products that we use every day that we never question why it's working or even how it's working. And we do that inside the context of our own values and how we determine value, just on the basis that it works. Sometimes I think we put products on trial too quickly that might be a little bit more difficult to explain how they're working or why. But it's a strange, almost hypocrisy that consumers can get into, where they're more than willing to invest time, energy, and resource and money into products that they just either believe or feel work, but really can't communicate the mechanisms of why it works or how it works. I would submit to you that you would be far better off to lean into just trying it and just sharing it on the basis of what you're feeling or hearing, rather than putting it on trial. Like, try it, but don't put it on trial, and give it some time to help others. I would also like to say that my dad drives the same car, wears the same clothes, eats the same food. I mean, is still as obnoxious in the same ways. I mean, nothing has really changed. And I love him, by the way, those are jokes, but nothing has really changed. What is, I'll go to the house, and this is real for me. My dad was not a highly emotional person. He was not the emotive dad that was affectionate or anything. He was a hard driving worker, A-type personality, and sometimes an absolute bear to be around. But the truth of the matter is, like, this has broken his heart in a very beautiful way. He's really tender, and he sits at home in retirement and gets letters, and I'll walk in and he'll pull a binder like this. And so, literally, this is what he'll say to me, Danielle. He'll say, what am I supposed to do about this? And then he'll hand it to me. And then I'll read a letter. And when I look up, he's like, his lip is quivering. He's like, what is that? Like, how does that happen? So he's still kind of falling in love every day with wow, this can help people in a way that I don't even think he envisioned. So my closing remarks are, if you're here today and you're taking this and you're trying this, then give it a fair shot. This isn't, I think it's interesting, we live in such an instantaneous world. I used to have to decide I liked a song, be willing to buy the entire album to get a song, drive to a music store, invest in a 1 hour's worth of music to get 4 minutes that I thought was really good, and then go home and put this on a device that would then, maybe record it from a vinyl to a cassette, then go to my car and listen to it. It was like 50 steps. And now I can just decide in a flash if I like this song or not. I mean, it's such a different world. We're expecting things really fast. Maybe the right analogy is like a true good dinner isn't cooked in a microwave. It doesn't happen fast. Like the things that take time, give them the time, and maybe don't put things so quickly on trial. The other thing I would tell you is, if you're on this call, you're not on just for you. And I would challenge you to think about, I just think it's important that you look for people that you might be able to help with this, because you may not have a product experience, but you may be that person that opens up a world of hope to someone that's struggling with something. So yeah, those are my closing thoughts.
Well, thank you, Tyler. I don't think I could wrap it up any more elegantly than that. So I will just say thank you so much. It's been honestly an honor and a privilege. And I thank you. I know this is reaching a lot of people and those that need to hear it today and in the weeks and months to come. So thank you again. And I hope you have an absolutely beautiful weekend.
Thanks a lot. Appreciate it.
All right. Bye.
Bye-bye.